Hello, Night Nation. I'm Trey Struggle here with Adam Eaton. Welcome into Sons of UCF Live. Adam, hello. How's your week going?
Hi, Trace. It's going fantastic. It's even better when it's Thursday. That means we're close to Friday, and we have a UCF football schedule to talk about. Nothing better than that.
Let me ask you about that. You brought up an interesting point.
Sure.
I was
Thank you.
I was told today at the bank, have a good weekend. What
Yeah.
what is the appropriate day of the week for have a good weekend? Because I know
Wow.
you're a stickler on the Happy
Yeah.
New Year's,
What
which
time?
you
What
pointed
time are you
out
at the bank?
about 3:30. I needed to do something work related
No, that's too
there.
early for have a good weekend.
Yeah. So is it Friday, right? Unless you know the person is going to be off on Friday and has a longer weekend.
Yes. I'll do late night Thursday. Like if you're out maybe with some friends, you're at a movie, at a bar, it's like 10 o'clock. Have a good weekend. I'm good. Yeah, miss me before 8 p.m. There's no good weekends before 8 p.m.
And I want to know, by the way, if you get any more Happy New Year's now that February is here. If you get any more.
I have not had any. I did have a hope this email finds you well today.
Well,
No
I
email
must tell you,
has
I'm guilty of that one.
no
I
email
do
has ever
know I'm
found me
on.
well. I can tell you this right now. An email that is sent to me has never found me well. I can guarantee you this.
Yeah, you have me rethinking that, but that is something I do. All right, speaking of Thursdays, it is going to be a Thursday, August 31st. UCF kicks off against New Hampshire. That, amongst the other dates on the schedule released this week. And it's mine, that one, and Sam Houston State that I think are the slam dunk UCF wins. I see no slam dunk UCF losses on the schedule. Hey, the other 10, they could go any direction.
That's the great thing about being in this conference now is I can look at the schedule at like 3 o'clock when you're at the bank and go, you know what, we're going 12-0, baby. And then I can look at the schedule at 11 after I've had a couple of happy dads and go, you know what, there's no way we're winning a game. I think there's a lot of games in here that are toss ups. Obviously, there's a lot yet that we don't know about some of the teams we're playing. I don't look at the schedule though and go, oh my goodness, what a gauntlet we're facing. Are there tough games? Yes. Are there tough stretches? Yes. But I don't look at any of these games and say, man, that team is absolutely going to be better than we are. The only team I look at and I say, ugh, is Utah. Utah's a tough physical football team. We get them the last week of the season. Who knows where they'll be at that point? But Utah is a team that's typically historically pretty good. Colorado, maybe. I mean, it's tough because they have basically a whole new roster. So I have no idea if they've upgraded in the offensive line or defensive line. So I think it's an interesting schedule. I think it's a favorable schedule. But here's what I think most of all, Trace. I think it's a fun schedule. There's a lot of fun to be had here. If you want to go to the bounce house, you got a bunch of fun matchups to go to the bounce house. If you're a road trip person, a la UCF Mike, you can go to Texas, you can go to Arizona. So you got some road trip options too. If Ames and West Virginia aren't really your cup of tea. So I think there's a little bit of everything for everybody here. I think it's a good fun schedule, and I can't wait to break it down later and figure out how we're going to win them all.
Well, the additional home game this year, a little bit easier travel, right? So there's no Boise on the schedule, no Lubbock, the game in Gainesville. So there's some more favorable things here. They avoid the cold weather, Iowa, late November kind of game. But
Well,
as
be
you
be
heard Gus
careful in
Malzahn
Iowa
say,
because Matt Dolan is here. He's going to get
yeah, I
upset.
know.
Okay.
But as Coach Gus Malzahn said a year ago, that they were practicing those late game situations. And look at, UCF had the point game with Baylor, the 1 point game with Texas Tech. That's the nature of this league, right? You're going to have these games go into the fourth quarter. Did UCF improve enough on the margins to flip some of those games over? That's going to be an interesting thing. We won't learn a great deal about during spring, but that's what's going to be interesting. Can they go from 6 to 8, 9, maybe more games with a more favorable schedule and improvement in some key positions?
Listen, you got to give Gus some credit for whatever you think about the decisions he's made. He's not standing pat. He's making changes. He's obviously made changes to the staff. We brought in some talent. KJ Jefferson's probably the headliner. I think we now have like 5 or 6 linebackers we've brought in, so we've got some depth there. So he's making the changes. He's doing the things that as fans we would have said, hey, this is where you've got to improve. This is where you've got to make some moves. He's making those moves now. We won't know until August hits whether these moves are actually going to work out. But as of right now, you look at where this UCF team was at the end of last season, where you think they're going to be at the end of this season. I think you can talk yourself into some improvement there, some growth there, some positive energy there. So will that translate onto the gridiron? Only I don't even know who knows. Nobody knows at this point.
Well, let's get some perspectives from Chris Boyle, who covers UCF for the Daytona Beach News Journal, who joins us now on Sons of UCF Live. And Chris seems to be having a camera problem, so we're just going to do it the old-fashioned way, Chris. We're going to do a little audio
Yeah,
here. How you doing?
sadly cameraless tonight, unfortunately. I will give everybody the note that I am in the nursery. I am under the sea. And I was not going to be fielding any requests to try to spin in my chair tonight. That's never happening again. Let's get that out of the way now.
Chris, welcome in. What do you make of this schedule? You just heard what Adam and I were talking about. Favorable travel-wise for UCF, more home games. What stands out to you?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, I think the logistics of it definitely stand out. You're looking at your road trips. You've got 5 of them on the year. Only 4 of them are out of state. Most of them are not terribly far away, with the exception of Arizona State. You get 3 of the newcomers from the Pac-12 that come to Orlando. So that definitely helps. One other thing that stands out, and I kind of got to tip my cap to Christian Simmons. I think he pointed this out to some degree yesterday. They play one FBS team with a winning record until the start of November. So the first 2 months of the season, you're playing teams that finished under 500 last year. Now, there's a few curveballs in there. There's definitely some teams you expect to be better. TCU's 2 seasons removed from making it to the national championship game. Florida, you expect is at least going to be more competitive, and they have a sense of urgency with Billy Napier potentially being at risk of losing his job. Colorado, who knows? I mean, they could be anything. In year 2 under Deion Sanders, they could be a legitimate contender, or they could be kind of what they were at the tail end of last year, in which they spiraled out of control and finished 4-8 after starting 3-0. So, there's definitely some teams in there that you think can improve upon last year's stretch, but the schedule shapes up to where UCF should be able to take another step forward with a pretty good group of returners back, and some changes in the coaching staff they think will be beneficial.
Space game Arizona, Black Friday Utah. Those aren't easy.
They are not. Arizona is going to be an interesting challenge. They did lose Jed Fish, their head coach, to Washington. So you do expect there will be a little bit of a drop off there. They hired Brent Brennan from San Jose State. The key for them is they kept arguably 2 of their best players in their quarterback, Noah Fifita, and their wide receiver, whose name I am going to butcher horribly here in just a second, to Tyroa McMillan.
Sounds right. Sounds right. Nailed it.
I hope so. I mean, I McMillan. I'll get that part right. Having Irish roots, I'll get that one right. But I think overall, Utah definitely is a team that is going to be a quality opponent. They're going to win 8 to 9 games. Just that's what they do pretty much every year. They've got the coaching continuity. They have the experience at quarterback so long as Cameron Rising stays healthy. It's a good roster. I think they're an instant impact team. I think they have a good chance to win the league right away.
Chris, what do you make of that early part of the schedule? I think it's the first 7 weeks. They only leave the state of Florida 1 time, and that's to go to TCU. Obviously, another road game at Gainesville. What do you make of that early part of the schedule? What's a respectable record coming out of that first 6-7 week stretch?
I would say 5-2 would be kind of what you're looking for. I know that there's maybe a bit ambitious to go 6-1. I think TCU is going to be better. I think that's going to be a very tough opening test in the conference. And again, Florida, who knows? Like Florida, you would think that team should be able to be a winning team this year. And let's be honest, that's a game they have to have. That might be genuinely a fireable offense if they lose at home to UCF, given the state of their schedule the rest of the way. You look at who they play before UCF and who comes after them. That's a game they have to have. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's going to be a very high urgency date in the swamp for Florida. Of course, it will be for UCF too, for not only for pride, but for trying to validate that 2021 victory in the Gasparilla Bowl, and wipe away the excuses of, Florida didn't care about that game, because surely those have been said for 3 years. But I do think, 5 wins, 6 wins of that first half of the schedule would be a really good start to it. You think they'll get the first 2 relatively, drama-free. Colorado, like I said, could be anything. They could be really good. They could be they could struggle. Cincinnati, even them, I think they have to be better. They were awful last year, and there's no really any other way to say it. They were 3-9. They were they won one game in the league, and that's going to be a team that has to turn it around to some degree too. But UCF's beaten them the last 2 years, so overall, I think it does set up well for them to get off to a hot start potentially.
Of the 4 Big 12 road games, TCU, Iowa State, Arizona State, and West Virginia, which do you think will be the toughest?
I think Iowa State. I think that's a better team than I expected. I thought Iowa State was going to be near the bottom of the league. They had a huge gambling sports betting scandal that took away a handful of their top players, but they had some young guys grow and play significant minutes last year. Rocco Beck, their quarterback, was a redshirt freshman. Abu Sama, who was was a true freshman at running back, I think he was newcomer of the year or one of the newcomers of the year candidates in the league. So that's not an easy place to win. It's going to be a raucous environment. They really do care about their football up there. I think that's going to be a tricky game. And I also think from a scheme standpoint, West Virginia ran the ball really well against UCF, and that's going to be a very difficult test later in the year as the weather gets colder. That game's right around Thanksgiving, the week before. So the temperature is going to drop, and I do think that's going to be a challenging game. If again, assuming everybody's healthy, Garrett Green, C.J. Donaldson, Jaheim White, that is a really tough trio of players to try to slow down.
I know it's just February, but give me floor and ceiling on this schedule. Just something to chew on here at the beginning.
Well, I had 4 as the floor last year and 8 as the ceiling, and I was right in the middle of it. So I felt like I did a pretty good job kind of scouting it out and setting some sort of realistic expectation here. I think the floor for UCF this year is probably 6. I think they can definitely win 6 of these games. And I'll say the ceiling is 9. I think that would be a really good, if everything broke their way type of season. I think they could go 9-3. I expect them more in the 7-5 range. I think that would be, which again, depending on your perspective, is either disappointing or it's a step forward in the right direction. And to me, it would be a step in the right direction. It isn't, I wouldn't call it an easier schedule, but it is a more favorable schedule. So you think that there is an opportunity to take advantage of that. But you have to understand that this is still year 2 in building the appropriate roster to be able to win this league. And, there's going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be some change at the offensive line. You lose left tackle. You lose your right guard, 2 of your, every game starters up front. You lose, a good amount of experience on the defensive side of the ball with your best pass rusher, your top tackler, and your best cornerback entering the portal. So there is going to be some holes to fill on the fly, and I do think that that's going to cap the overall ceiling to me for about 9.
Good stuff. Chris Boyle covers UCF for the Daytona Beach News Journal. Chris, thanks for hopping on with us. Go spin around in that chair. We won't know.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Thank you, Chris. All right. Some more football news.
Do you think Chris was wearing a shirt during that interview?
I didn't.
Because I don't think he was. I don't think he was. Just
I've given no thought to this. He's a professional. I think he was prepared for the live show and had a little camera issue. So red polo, he says.
I mean, prove it, Chris. What can I tell you?
We're about 6 weeks away from the start of spring football. The schedule out there now. Monday, March 11th is when it's expected to kick off officially. Friday, April 12th, 7 o'clock in the Bounce House. What do you think of that on a Friday night? I think that's better than a high noon start. I know some fans probably want Saturday. Those that don't live in greater Orlando area want something on the weekend. But I think that gives the fans a nice night out on a Friday.
Yeah, it was the Friday night last year. I thought it was a good atmosphere. It was a better temperature from that perspective. Interesting, cool, fun night, right? I get Fridays aren't optimal for people, but I'll give a shout out to my guy, Dolly Drama, who says that if they really want to do something different, do a little Kingdom fundraiser, stream this thing. We're streaming, we're fundraising whether or not we play songs. I'm sure we can fundraise whether or not we could find a way to stream the spring game. So again, Friday's not optimal. And if you can make it out, it was a cool event last year. It was a better temperature, better weather. So I think it makes some sense. The 12 p.m. noon baking in the bounce house wasn't always fun. So I don't mind it, but I can see why Friday is a bit of a non-starter for a lot of people.
What about $1 a minute? You can just buy how many minutes you want.
Yeah, I mean, go for it, right? Like, I feel like we found ways to monetize a lot of things around here at UCF. I feel like this is one, and who's really like, I understand Michigan had their thing, but is Connor Stallions at home with his pen being like, yeah, UCF spring game? I doubt it, right? So I know everyone has the old subterfuge concern, right? But I highly doubt, Dion's at home on a Friday, like, let me check out the bubble screens. I think we'll be okay.
All right, we'll talk a little more football later. Men's basketball, switching gears. Tough one for the Knights Wednesday night. 18th ranked Baylor. Knights lose 77-69. Darius Johnson with 23 points. It was Marcellus Avery with 16. I thought one of the most interesting questions asked in the postgame of head coach Johnny Dawkins was just what it's like, around the margins now in this league. You can't make too many mistakes. Knights had 16 turnovers. Let's hear from Coach.
Looking at a whole nother picture with just how we closed a few games, a record looks totally different. But that's not what happened. So we have to find a way to turn it around now. We have to turn our fortune around and regroup, and then we got to respond. That's what I've told our guys all season long, and that doesn't change. We have to regroup and we have to respond.
That they do. They have Oklahoma coming to town. Let's talk about it with former UCF development coach Ben Hazel, who is back with us on Suns Live. What's the apparel? Okay, that's what he got. No bow tie on a loss.
I couldn't do it today. I'm just happy to be here.
We're glad to have you, Ben. A lot of things that jump out at you in this game. 1 of 7 from the free throw line, UCF. Baylor 20 of 25, 17 of 21 in the second half, and the 16 turnovers. So those are the sorts of things that you can't do home or away against a talented team like Baylor.
I mean, that's the story of what we've been asking for, right? You play in an ultra competitive conference, the margins to win are extremely small. So, I mean, they've been really competing hard, but it's kind of what Coach Dawkins talks about, that progress throughout the season. We're definitely not catching anybody by surprise anymore.
What were you most happy about in the performance? Again, they led for a good bit of this. They were up at the half, just couldn't close out, but there's still a lot of, strong points in this one.
Finally, some production on the offensive end. I mean, it's kind of weird, but, we finally start playing well offensively. And then we kind of start giving some stuff up on the defensive end. And shout out to my mom. Hey, Mom.
Hi, Mrs. Hazel. So Ben, we talked a lot about Darius Johnson. He came out on fire in this game. What's that like as a player, especially when you're the point guard and you're supposed to distribute the ball and get your teammates involved? How do you balance, hey, I'm feeling it tonight, but also his responsibility of trying to kind of run the offense and get other guys involved?
Well, you already hit it on the head. That's the issue. You're trying to balance. When you're that hot, the best thing for our team is for you to keep shooting. So for him, you typically would say probably need to reel some of those shots back, but I'm almost looking at it like he had that long stretch where he really didn't score. He's had 13 points with 8 minutes to go. So to only finish with 23, it's almost like, hey, man, like you definitely should have probably got a few more attempts up. And I mean, especially with the turnover numbers, it's like, hey, those are a few shots that should have been for you instead of turnovers. And that was probably one of the core reasons why we ended up falling short, was the turnover battle.
I know there's many reasons for this, right? But is this one of the reasons why we really miss having Shamari Allen in the lineup right now, is his ability to be on ball, and Darius could have essentially been on the wing hitting shots. Obviously, Shamari's defense is well known, but this is one of those key reasons why not having Shamari was big for UCF.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, I really didn't see it as much against Cincinnati, but this was the game where you really expected to see it. They're extremely talented, Baylor, from top to bottom, and their guards are really good. So with Darius having that hot start, having him be able to kind of get a little bit of a rest on the defensive end, but also not having to kind of keep your wits and not be in control of everything. I like the way that he had to be, kind of similar to what we saw earlier in the season. Coach Dawkins really found that adjustment, but couldn't really go to it because, we're a little shorthanded due to injuries.
Going into this one, I think most fans would have thought that Jacoby Walter would have been a problem. And UCF did a good job with him, held him to 8 points.
Yeah, no, I mean, we did a great job. I expected a lot more from him, but I mean, he's a freshman. So, as we know, being consistent in this conference is extremely hard. So he had a pretty off night, but I think that's pretty much why you would put Baylor where they are and why they're in contention to potentially even win this conference is because they have a lot of depth. I mean, they have a lot of depth in the paint. They have a lot of depth at the guard spot. So where he lacked, his teammates picked up, and they really didn't skip a beat, even though I'm sure they wouldn't say they played their best.
You said right there, Baylor could win this conference. If you had to say right now, we'll check back on this question in a couple of weeks, but you said it right now, who wins this league?
It's a tough one, as you know. I mean, you look at it, all these games are close, triple overtimes, but I think Houston. I hate to say it. I do think the American Conference newcomer is probably in the best position to win it just because they overlook all things inconsistent, all things that you would typically see be inconsistent from teams. I mean, we see it on the offensive end. They pretty much made that a non-factor by how well they defend. And I think that'll hold up. And we're not really seeing, some crazy offensive teams in the conference. So I think they'll be in every single game, and with how they play, I think they'll pull out the tight ones.
And obviously, without Shamari, we've seen Coach Dawkins go to a few different lineups. Right? He's DeMar Langford was in there last night. We had John Jones in there. What is not having guys like Shamari and CJ Walker? What does that do to the other guys in the team? And sort of how does that change their role? And how does that change kind of the overall makeup of the team when guys have to kind of step in and maybe do something they're not used to or something that they haven't necessarily been asked to do so far?
Well, from the player's perspective, it's I hate to say this, but you're like, dang, man, you're not playing. Let's go. Right. So it's your time to be able to show off some of the things that you probably feel that you're capable of. As a coach, it's extremely unsettling just because you're at a later point of the season where you're starting to see some unknowns, right? We saw adjustments to get the lineups that you really like and get the production out of them the way that you want. And that took a little bit of time to get there. And then you kind of have to go directly back to square zero as far as how you mentally game plan for rotations, matchups, foul issues, all of those things kind of have to be adjusted when you have core guys like that not playing.
Speaking of fouls, I'm not one to always have the conspiracy theory of the refs are against us and they want the other team to win, but there seemed to be a bit of a foul disparity at times, particularly last night, right? I'm not worried about that as much. I mean, calls are calls. You're going to win some and lose some. But as a coach, what's the strategy when you feel like you're getting jobbed on calls? Are you in the ref's ear? Are you fired up? Like, how does Coach Dawkins or any coach really take that when you feel like you're getting the short end of the calls?
First, that's extremely subjective to the coach. Right. So there are some coaches that like to play the cool. Hey, man, I'm your friend. You do no wrong, Mr. Ref. Like, we're buddies. There's some guys that'll scream their head off and tell you, I hate you and I hope terrible things happen to you. So Coach Dawkins is probably more on the mild-mannered side. Some of the assistant coaches may not be as mild-mannered as he is. But I don't really think as a coach, you might even feel it, but it's not something that you try to show to the players just because you're always taught to overcome it. I mean, I came from a conference when I played in college. We didn't have a conference tournament. So if you're getting shafted on the road, it is what it is. You got to figure out a way to win the game. So, Coach Dawkins definitely takes that approach, but I know for a fact he sees a little bit of stuff that, when we go on the road, he's like that ball typically, should bounce your way when you're at home, but we don't have that footprint just yet.
But as a coach, do you feel like an obligation to fight for your players and sort of stand up? Like as a player, do you want to see your coach being like, hey, I want to see him in the ref's ear, giving him an earful or exchanging, addresses for Christmas cards, right? Whatever it happens to be. Do you want to see that as a player?
No, you don't really care. It's like, as long as I'm in the game, that's great. But, we got to kind of go to the next play. It probably makes you play worse, right? Because your attention is more on the ref than the next play. So it's like you're always taught next play, no matter what. So seeing your coach go off, it's like, okay, but coach, what's the call for this play that's coming up?
Speaking of tough calls at Cincinnati, what a Bearcat fell onto Ibrahima Diallo when he got called for the foul. Yeah. That was a terrible one.
It was pretty rough. I mean, but that's to be expected. It's just that I'm sure Baylor was probably a little surprised some of those 50-50 calls went your way. And that's really where it sits for me. I mean, it's not that I think they made any outrageous calls necessarily. It's just you would always hope that kind of being at home, similar to what Bill Self is used to getting in some of these more blue chip schools, that when they're at home, if there's any doubt, it goes our way.
All right, I hate to do it, but Saturday, Oklahoma must win. I say that as we approach the halfway point with a road trip at Texas Tech and BYU. You got to protect the home court. Knights have been going 1-1 on these games, but this week now, they lost that Saturday game, lost the midweek game. Must win now?
I mean, I would say yes, but the crazy thing is it almost feels like every week is a must win. I mean, whether Baylor coming off a few tough ones, they're in a must win. We're in a must win to not string together too many losses. Texas Tech, even though they had a good one, was just coming off a pretty rough stretch. They don't have any road wins in the conference. So, I mean, it's what we love. I think both teams will be treating this as a must win.
I asked Coach Dawkins after the game about the learning curve here of seeing these teams and getting to know these teams. They're going to now get to a point in the schedule, with BYU coming. They've played BYU. They've seen them. I mean, I know likewise, but they have a better feel for these teams as they see them over the second half of the season too.
Yeah, and that's the second half adjustment part that I've kind of talked about before. And it's not even necessarily that you have to play the team directly. It's now that I've been able to see what other teams that we've played against do against them, I can try to come up with my own plan or strategy to make my team successful. So it's only getting harder from here, pretty much. I mean, like every team is in a must win, like we just talked about. And, we're becoming more familiar. We're not shocking teams coming back from being down 15-20. Teams have seen that on film now, so they get down on us. They're not panicking. So it's really looking like, teams are understanding that in order to beat us, they need to put together a full 40. And that's a learning curve that everybody else is going through with us being new, and we're going through it the same.
Ben, our weekly Ibrahima Diallo question. He got called for a flagrant one last night. What did you make of the call on Ibrahima?
It's just him being too big. I mean,
I hate when that happens.
When you're playing that hard and you're running that fast, and you're just focused on the ball. I mean, I've gotten hit in the face too many times on accident by 7-footers. They're just big dudes, limbs flying. I thought it was unfortunate. I didn't necessarily think it needed to be upgraded because I was watching. I pulled up the replay on my phone during the game, but it's just unfortunate, really.
All right, last one.
How does that feel, by the way? How does that feel to get hit in the face by 7
Probably not good.
One time in high school, I almost got my teeth knocked out by my own teammate. So it's something that will have you wanting to fight. That's for sure.
Ben, I'm watching the NFL Pro Bowl right now. They're doing dodgeball. How are you at dodgeball? If we put you in a dodgeball court, you dominating or you below par? Where are you at in dodgeball?
I'm dominating. We had a campus-wide dodgeball tournament by Alcohol Anonymous, so there was no drinking involved. But we, of course, won the dodgeball tournament, and I say that it was no drinking involved very, very politely, considering my mom is on the call.
Hi, Mom.
We appreciate Mrs. Hazel being on this with us. All right, so your key to getting a victory Saturday against Oklahoma, what do you want to see? How will you feel about the Knights in this one?
I think for the first time, we could put a little bit more emphasis on how we perform on the offensive end with just not turning the ball over. That's probably a huge thing. But we also need to tighten the screws on the defensive end. I mean, we got killed in the paint. What we always typically use the rebounding numbers is how physical you are and if you're really protecting the paint. But, I mean, we got outscored 30-16 in the paint. So we're giving up too many straight line drives. Guys are getting straight to the basket and just being able to get directly to the rim. We got to be solid against Oklahoma for 40 minutes, pretty much. There's not going to be any shortcuts there. They're not going to turn the ball over a lot. They run their stuff. We just got to keep guys in front and not turn the ball over, and I think we'll win.
Saturday at 4. Appreciate you, Ben. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Have a good one.
See you, Ben. See you, Mama Hazel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Hazel. You consider this a must-win out?
I mean, I think he said it right. They're all kind of must wins at this point, but Ideally, if we want to get to some level of a postseason play, yeah, you're going to have to put together a win like this, right? We talked on Around the Kingdom, foreshadowing, by the way, about how all these games are really quad one games at this point, right? So we didn't get a chance to win a quad one with Baylor. Now 2-6 in quad one. You'd like to get another one on the schedule if you want to try to find ways to get to either the NIT or the NCAA. So must win. I mean, they're all must win at this point, right? But I think this is an important one that you want to win for optics perspectives and just for momentum at this point, right? It's a team that needs some positive mojo. Being down two guys and Shamari and CJ are tough. I think you'd love the positive mojo of pulling a win against Oklahoma. And we have unfinished business. Last time they were here at UCF, they beat us pretty handily. So Johnny was there. Most of those guys weren't there. But maybe they want a little revenge factor there. So we'll see. But I do think it'd be really, really, really nice to win this one.
What makes that Baylor loss tough, right, is that Cincinnati was winnable up 12 and they let the game go. If you get the win there, you can afford to lose that Baylor game. But you're right. They're all must wins. And I just feel so much energy now around basketball. I'm really excited about it. Each game, and I was exchanging texts with Ben on Saturday. I think he watched all those games over the course of the day, the triple overtime game. I mean, now I'm tuning into these games in a way I wasn't before in the American.
Yeah, it's great. And I think we talked about this before the season, right? Like, I don't know, Trace, let me ask you this question. There were low expectations for UCF basketball, right? Let's all just transparently, right? None of us were
all being honest. Yeah.
Right. And now they're playing so well. It's almost like makes it more fun because you weren't expecting this. And now you're like, oh my goodness, we're a decent basketball team. Like, I got to watch the game tonight. I wonder if there's an element of the expectations coming in being kind of lower that make this even more fun, because it almost feels like we're not supposed to be here, yet we're here, we're playing well, we're in games, we're winning games. I wonder if that changes the excitement level from a lot of fans.
I'll tell you, when they would struggle or maybe lose against an ECU or something, I took a loss like that harder than the loss against Baylor, knowing how talented Baylor is and how good a team they are. And that's not a moral victory talk, but they hung with them, right? And we know without the players on the roster, a couple of guys that could have made a difference there. So I'm enjoying these games. I mean, I don't want to see them lose, with 42 points at Houston. That's not a good game, but they're in these games and they are enjoyable, and the crowds have been great, and the atmosphere on the road has been great. When you're watching it on TV. So far, so good in terms of enjoyment. Let's see if they can string together some more wins over the second half of the season.
Well, I think the crowd thing is interesting. I saw the Oklahoma game already sold out, right? A good crowd against Baylor. I think that's been really, really fun to see, is the students coming out and a lot of folks actually coming out supporting the team. I think that's been a welcome change. We all kind of thought about this year is how would the crowd react and how would the crowds be? I think it's been a pleasant surprise. We'll ask our next guest, who's kind of an expert on attendance figures and ratings figures, but I think it's been a pleasant surprise with how the fans have responded.
Before we switch sports, let's turn over to Jeff Allen, a little look around the Big 12.
Houston has ascended into the top spot of the conference with a 5-game winning streak. The 4th-ranked Cougs headed to a top 10 matchup on Saturday as they travel to Lawrence, Kansas to take on the 8th-ranked Jayhawks. That marquee matchup tips at 4 o'clock on ESPN. The rest of the Saturday slate in the Big 12 has Texas taking on number 25 TCU. The Horned Frogs have won 3 in a row. That'll be at 2 o'clock on ESPN2. Kansas State visits Oklahoma State. That's 2 o'clock on ESPN+. Cincinnati travels to number 15 Texas Tech, 6 o'clock ESPN+. Number 22 BYU will take on West Virginia, 6 o'clock on ESPN+. And number 12 Iowa State and number 18 Baylor square off in Texas. That's 8 o'clock on ESPN2. Baylor fresh off a victory over the UCF Knights last night. As far as the Knights are concerned, they've got their sights set down number 23 Oklahoma. That'll be a 4 o'clock tip on ESPN+. With your Big 12 minutes, I'm Jeff Allen.
I gotta say,
Thank you, Jeff
nobody
Allen.
pronounces ESPN as well as Jeff Allen. He's really good at the ESPN. He's really good at that. That's good.
Switch it up on sports from basketball to softball. Just a week out, we had media day with head coach Cindy Ball Malone and several players on Sunday, and coach now on playing in the Big 12.
We're very excited to be in the Big 12, competing against the best softball that the RPI has told that it's the best softball for the last couple of years. But I think inside in our locker room, in our inner circle, we're approaching the season just as we would approach every single season, because we prepare to play against the best year in and year out. So
let's get some more information on this 24 team with the voice of UCF softball. You know him as Eric Lopez. I know him as the star of Around the Kingdom here from the Sons of UCF. Elo, hello to you.
Well, hello there, gentlemen. Adam, you inspired me with your look today. You noticed I had to bring out my Culpepper jersey because you're wearing number 10. Trace, you can learn a thing or two from Adam here as far as wardrobe's concerned.
I could learn a lot of things from that. No doubt about that. Eric, this is a team with 11 seniors. So a veteran team going into this first year in the Big 12. Who's the most important one on this roster? Put you on the spot. I know they're all important, but if this person struggles or there's an injury situation, who do they really need? Who's a catalyst for this team amongst that senior class?
I'm going to give you a name that people may not be familiar with yet. Sona Halahan. She's a transfer from Cal. She was a second-team All-Pac-12 performer 2 seasons ago. Won 18 games, also hit 13 home runs. I think she is a big wild card in this. I think she has the potential to lead this team in home runs as a hitter, and I think she has a potential to really be right there with Sarah Willis as a 1-2 punch in the circle. And the reason why I think she's important is she's pitched in the Pac-12, which is one of the strongest leagues in college softball. I think she can help UCF as they get into the Big 12, and she's not going to be fazed by any of that. Now, she had an injury last year, which limited her last year in California. She transferred here. She comes here with her hitting coach, Becca Mueller's the new hitting coach for UCF. She was the hitting coach at Cal, so there's familiarity there. So, look, every senior is important. It's 11. It's a long list. It's the most decorated senior class, I think, in program history. But I'm going to go with somebody that hasn't played a game yet in black and gold, because I think if she has a great year, the season could go in a lot of incredible directions for this program this season if she has a big year for them. So I'm going to pick her just to go with your question there.
I know a lot of people want to talk about offense. They want to talk about pitching. Let me ask you about defense. What do you think about this team defensively? How do you think they stack up in the Big 12?
Well, I think the thing that helps on paper, they bring just about everybody back. They bring back their entire outfield. Jazz Williams, the shortstop, leads the way. She's an incredible shortstop, had a historic year defensively at short for UCF, and I think her bat came around in the second half of the season. Doherty's and Cody at the corners, first and third. I think the interesting questions will be second base and catcher. Second base, Michaela Macario transferred back home to San Diego to play at San Diego State. Aubrey Evans, the sophomore out of Apopka, played a lot at second base. She could start there, but they have this freshman, Samantha Ray, who they call Justine Molina 2.0. And if Knight fans remember the 2022 team, Justine Molina was a big weapon defensively at second base, and there's a lot of similarities there. They also have a transfer from Louisiana, Stormy Kotsalnik, who is a big bat who can play second base. And then catching, Ashley Griffin returns after missing all of last year with an injury. She's back to bring some offense to the catching position. Carson Fryer, who picked up the slack last year, more of a defensive catcher, returns. Jada Cody can catch. They got a freshman in Kylie Strout that can catch. So I'm curious to see in those two positions what direction the coaching staff decides to go. Jen Salling was regarded as one of the great defensive players in the history of the college softball and international softball. It runs the defense now. I'm really fascinated to see what they do in these two positions. Plus, with all this depth that they have, they might move some pieces around early in the season just to create whatever matchups they want to have.
You got to make good roster decisions when you have so many options.
They do. I've never seen Coach Ball Malone be asked by a fan base like she was in the fall, saying, hey, good luck figuring out the starting lineup. Because this is a team, you mentioned the 11 seniors, but they have 7 freshmen, which is rated as the 16th best recruiting class in college softball. So you have this incredible young talent of a freshman class. You have this incredible senior class, and then a little bit of in between the juniors and the sophomores. So there's a lot of depth. I think this is the deepest, most talented UCF roster, and this is my 18th season. It is the most talented, deepest roster in program history. The question is, does it all fit? How does it fit? And obviously the competition goes up a different level from a conference standpoint. So even though I think this team is way better than last year's team, I don't know if it'll show on the win-loss record. And I think that's something that fans need to keep in mind when they get into the season.
You mentioned Jada Cody. Obviously, she's one of the headline names in this team. I think a lot of people thought she had a quote unquote down year last year because she had such a great year the year prior. What are reasonable expectations for Jada Cody this upcoming season?
Well, you're funny, a down year where she was the unanimous first team all conference performer in the American Athletic Conference. Buddy, and Coach Paul Malone has shared this story. When Jada came in, she was known more as a defensive player. I don't think anybody expected this offensive explosion for her. She's developed into that. She had that historic year in 2022. You look at last year, you're like, oh, well, that was disappointing. Well, it really was a solid year. It's just when you compare it to 22, I think it was a situation where, okay, you know, the expectation. I think she'll have a better year than last year. I don't think she'll reach the 2022 numbers. I don't think that's her. But she brings, I think what's going to help her this year is last year she had a lot of responsibilities. She had to play third base. She had to catch a young, inexperienced pitching staff. Now with the depth in the catching position, I don't think she'll catch much, if at all. And I think she could just focus on third base. And there's so much experience and leadership on this team that I think that'll take some of the load and some of the pressure off of her. And I think she'll relax and have a great year this season in her final year. I think she's talked about this year being personal, unfinished business. They weren't satisfied by the way the season ended last year, losing in the regionals to South Carolina and Tallahassee. And I think her and Shannon Doherty in particular, who have combined, they both have been part of 151 UCF wins during their time here. I think they want to send it on a high note and set more, they've done a lot of historical things here. I think they want to reach one more historical feat before their careers are done here in the black and gold.
Those are good facts. You should write our headlines, Eric. You mentioned pitching. Everybody obviously knows the name Sarah Willis.
Yeah.
Who after Sarah Willis are we going to see in the circles this year? Who are some names that you will see from the pitching staff perspective?
That is a great question because we have 8 arms on the staff, the most ever. I mean, Rich Wallace might try to take one or two away. He might need them.
He might need one or two.
Yeah, because you've got Sarah Wallace who returns, who's in the top 100 best players on all these lists and had an incredible year last year as the pitcher of the year in the American. I mentioned Sona. I think she's a big wild card in this. But you also have Grace Jewell who returns, who was an all-regional pitcher last year. You have Caitlin Felton, who I think is 100% healthy and I think is ready to break out. I think the stuff's there. I think she's ready to break out there. So you got those 4. They added Ava Justman, a transfer from Wisconsin, who's a lefty. So you have them. You have the young freshman Isabella Vega, who I think a lot in the program believe she's the future of this program. She's the next one alongside Cochran. So they have a lot of options. And I think Coach Paul Malone has even talked about, and I had an interview with her that aired on In the Circle podcast. She plugged there. But they're trying to figure out who are going to be their starters, who's going to be their relievers. I think you're going to see a kind of a baseball approach to this, Adam, that, it's becoming more and more of a thing in softball. And I think Coach Malone did that on purpose because to compete against the best teams in the country, against Oklahoma in your conference, against the Texas of the world, you need more than 2-3 arms. The days of one pitcher carrying you to Oklahoma City or a deep run in the postseason are over in this sport. You need as many arms as you get. And I think part of that philosophy is let's build the depth arm-wise, and I think they hope they have done that.
Eric, this may be my last question in the rotation, and keep in mind it's only an hour show. But our good friend Don't Falk Up wants to know have you ever talked about needing more seats at the facility? He feels like no one's bringing that up, Eric. The floor is yours.
Season tickets sold out, Elo.
Season tickets are sold out. I've been told that the Oklahoma series is sold out. You have to get some tickets on the secondary market. We need to bring in JP Gilbert to be the secondary market expert. But Oklahoma tickets, I'm hearing
he has become an expert.
Yes. He's my go-to. They're going for about $150, $200. I'm hearing for the Oklahoma series
per game.
Yeah. So that's a big one. So yes, we need more seats, Adam. I don't know what else I can say. I've said it on Around the Kingdom many a times. They need a facelift on that stadium, and I love that place. That's like a second home to me. It's my 18th season. I've seen that stadium since it's built, but it needs a new scoreboard. It needs more seats. The interest is there. I think they're going to have record attendance for a 3rd straight season. They've been in the top 50 in attendance the last 3 seasons. And that's despite being held in containment. Trace could speak better to that as somebody who's covered games there in the regional. It's not the most media friendly from that standpoint. And of course, on day games, a lot of people don't come because of the lack of shade. that needs to be addressed. Hopefully it gets addressed. I know there's a long laundry of list of things that have to be addressed from a facility and financial standpoint at UCF, but that has to be at the top of the list because the interest is there and the program has earned that right to get those upgrades, in my opinion.
Adam, he's not kidding about second home. He's got a cot in the broadcast booth.
Trace would know. Trace has
yeah.
seen me broadcast in the booth during games. It's intense.
Elo, let me end with one of our mailbag questions for you. Scott, 88513. How far do you think this team can go this year?
This is a tough one to forecast. You know, I think the high ceiling is they can host. That's why I brought the shirt. This is the 2022 Orlando Regional.
Props.
He's a pro.
Props.
He's a pro's pro.
Conference championship ring there. They could host. If they could host, be a top. That's why they play this tough schedule. If they win enough games of these, they could be a top 16 national seed and make a run to Oklahoma City. I know that's their end goals. I think that's possible. But I could also see a scenario where this jump, and we've seen this with some of the other sports, Trace, where you take your lumps, you know, the depth of the Big 12. I've said this. The two strongest sports in the Big 12, in my opinion, are men's basketball and softball. How do they handle going to Lubbock, Texas? How do you handle going to Waco?
How does anybody?
You tell me, Trace. You've done those trips. You've done some of those trips. Good luck. How do they handle those trips? How do you handle adversity that you're going to face in the Big 12? This team doesn't usually lose conference series. What happens if you lose a series, say, to Oklahoma State on the road or Baylor? So I could see a scenario where the worst case scenario, they're on the bubble for the tournament. Best case scenario, they're a national seed hosting, trying to being a contender for Oklahoma City. I know it's that wide range of a deal, but that's kind of what it is because this is a historic year. We're not used to this type of competition year round, but they believe they're ready for it. And I think they're confident about it and they're excited about this opportunity. They're embracing it, but they're all in on this. You know, you guys have talked about Gus Malzahn about being all in on this season in football. I think Coach Ball Malone and the staff are all in on this season with this group.
Gets underway next Thursday. You're on the call, right, for those?
Every home game, it will be on ESPN Plus. I will have the call. Alex Powers will be my analyst this season. So have a lot of fun games this year. Of course, Oklahoma and Texas will come to the Plex. So will BYU, and your friend, Maddie Bejarano, will be there. That's a nice storyline. Kansas will come. It'll get going next Thursday. UConn, primetime, Thursday night. Howard before that at 4:30, doubleheader. So we're going right away. 2 games in one day on Thursday.
The voice of UCF softball, part of In the Circle, the star of Around the Kingdom, Eric Lopez. Thanks for spending some time with us on Sons of UCF Live.
Always, gentlemen. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I want to welcome Christy Saintville, a student at UCF, who will be providing some coverage for us on softball. Her latest story with some sound bites from head coach Cindy Ball Malone, now up on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. She, Andrew Cherico, and I were part of Media Day, and we've got a bunch of interviews that'll show up at some point.
I see what you're doing there. I see what you're doing there. Yes, it's in my queue. It's in my queue of things to post. It is. It's in the queue.
All right, we'll roll this one. Next one.
Hey, Night Nation. This is Miles Giller, your Sons of UCF picks expert. Now let's go around the kingdom.
Did he do this on picks or was it on expert or?
It felt more like it was on expert. Yeah.
Yeah.
That may be a tip of the cap to UCF Mike, who disputes the expert title.
Yeah, I saw Miles out at the basketball game last night, so good to have Miles part of the Suns family. A couple news and notes before we get to the mailbag. Baseball, most season tickets sold in program history, so this move to the Big 12, rising tide across all sports. Women's basketball continues to struggle, though. Dropped to 1-8 in league play, lost 84-43 at number 23, West Virginia. Saturday, Iowa State at noon at home. Then they are against Cincinnati on Tuesday at 6. The aforementioned Eric Lopez and I mixed it up on this week's all new, exciting Around the Kingdom. Let's hear a little of that.
Here's what I don't get. This program has won one NCAA tournament game in its history. One. By the way, the women's has only won one as well. There's no track record for history for this either basketball programs. And yet, we're judging them. We think they should be right at the level of football, which has accomplished way more and has way more resources. I don't understand that logic. I never have. This is the Big 12. I'm the most gauntlet, toughest conference in college basketball by far. I don't care who you have as the coach. You're going to struggle to win there unless you pick up the support around the program. And again, and I wrote in that column, my whole point is this has been going on for a long time. We're talking 15, 20 years. And I got news for you. Johnny Dawkins is not stressing about coaching for his job. Johnny Dawkins doesn't need UCF. UCF needs Johnny Dawkins. Don't believe me? Ask Bill Self.
Boom.
I don't have
wish
Bill
he'd be a
Self.
little more opinionated,
Yeah,
though.
I don't have Bill Self available to ask, though. But I believe it.
I wish he'd be a little more opinionated. Have you watched Around the Kingdom this week? You'll find that on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. We continue our look back at the 23 football season in our countdown. And this is a tough one. And you say to me it's a little longer. You say to me it's a little longer. It should be a little shorter. It's UCF and Baylor. Let's turn to Clay Pasco. And
Clay's Corner, like you've never seen it before.
It's me, Clay. Welcome back to Clay's Corner. Today, we're going to be talking about the Baylor game. If you're wondering why I look a little different, it's because my dorm flooded last night, and I'm actually a mermaid, and when I get wet, I turn into at Nitro Olivia on Twitter. Today we're going to be talking about the Baylor game. For those of us that don't have the free time to watch 3 hours of football, I don't blame you, especially with the game we're about to cover today. So I'm gonna recap the Baylor game in 2 minutes or less. Week 5 versus Baylor. UCF comes out strong with a nice stop against Baylor. The ball is handed to Johnny Richardson. He takes it to the house. And then Timmy, quarterback, keeps it. And then Timmy dimes it to Javon to where he literally has time to go on a Twitter rant. Baylor finally scores to make it 21-7. It's all fine because Damari Henderson scoops and scores for 6. Kobe Hudson catches a great pass and brings it up 35-7. And at this point, the game is over because who would blow a 28-point lead at home, right? Screw it, someone's down there. Baylor marches down our throats and gets a 2-point conversion. Timmy throws a dime to my boyfriend. Baylor again goes down the field and scores. Baylor again gets a 2-point conversion. I think you guys see the pattern here. We were so close to responding, and then RJ Harvey fumbles. Timmy does an illegal forward pass, and we give the ball back to Baylor. Baylor gets a nice field goal, and then Timmy does this.
Running out of time! What do you got? McLean! He's still on his feet! Oh my goodness! It's caught! Unbelievable!
And then we missed a field goal. I actually was one of the people that left early during this game. Not because I wanted to, but because I was very tired from being up since 7:30 that morning to help out with the operations at the stadium that day. And I even said to myself after the third quarter that, there's no way that we lose this game. And if we do, I don't want to be here to see it. And so in the time it took me to walk to my car and to drive the short drive home, that was when all hell broke loose. And I, being a Detroit Lions fan this past Sunday, I definitely had some nightmarish flashbacks to this game from what I was seeing from that last game. So
thank you guys for watching, and go Knights. Charge on. Charge on.
Charge on.
Charge on.
What has happened here? We got to have production meetings, I think, now. I did not know any of the rest of Clay's Corner may be appearing on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. I think he's lost his real estate in Sons of UCF Live.
Dolly wins the comment of the evening, as you can enjoy.
Well, we're talking about paying for the minute of the streaming of the spring game.
But the poor guy had his dorm flooded. That's unfortunate, huh?
All right, so you'll find future editions of Clay's Corner on the Sons of UCF YouTube
or
channel.
some other channel.
I'm reclaiming the 3 minutes that we just dedicated to that. A couple more football notes. East-West Shrine Bowl quarterback John Rice Plumlee. I see the list come out today. He's named to the All-West. I thought the All-West team, the All-West practice team, which made me think that we need to come up with some Sons awards like that. That's the sort of thing I think Brian W. Peterson would headline, the Sons of UCF practice team.
Our esteemed CFO, Brian David Peterson. I'm in.
Yeah. Senior Bowl, wide receiver Javon Baker pulled out of Thursday's practice with a tweaked hamstring. I think, though, he's got some highlight reel catches. He's a burner speedster. So I think he acquitted himself well in the practices.
He made a name this week. He did himself really well this week. He was the top, I think, speedster. I think they did some sort of a tracking mechanism. Had some big catches. I think he did a good job this week. Put himself in a good positive spot.
Hey, it's time for Brian.
It's that time again. Time to open the Brian W. Peterson Sons of UCF mailbag.
I hate to demote Brian again, but maybe we'll bring back the young lady from the previous segment and she can introduce them. I think she's got a future here with Clay. I think Clay's on the YouTube.
Wow. So we're Olivia, I think her name. Olivia is now Olivia's Corner.
Yeah. Yeah, Olivia's.
I should have rephrased that differently. Yeah, I didn't think that one through. That's my bad.
At UCF XOS, Andy, I don't know what the hell you're talking about most of the time online. You bring me into all sorts of Twitter posts. I don't even understand what you're saying, but you're asking if I still think UCF will go undefeated in football, overall number 2 seed. No. I am on the record now. I see 4 losses on that schedule. I'm not buying all the hopium. It'll only be UCF, which, of course, we play when we go to Arizona State. I'm not a golfer. You're not planning on making that one, are you?
It's unlikely. I mean, look, one of my bucket list items, though, from a sports fan perspective, is the Waste Management Open at Phoenix. That's the hole. I think it's the 16th hole.
That's what it's called, the Waste Management Open?
That's what it's called. And if you hit a hole in one, people throw beers everywhere. It's like a raucous stadium atmosphere. It's seems like a really cool event. So that's a bucket list item. I think it's played in February, though, so not going to help me when we're there in whatever it is, October.
More serious question from Robert, 2 letters, 2 words. Should the coaching staff changes made by Gus be seen completely positive, or is Gus hitting the panic button? I don't think it's panic button. I think he addressed what he saw as some areas of concern.
Yeah, I think the opposite effect would, if he had just run it back, how would we all feel? Right? If he just run it back with the same staff, no changes, I think we'd be killing him right now saying, how could you not upgrade something? I think he made some changes. Whether they're going to work out, nobody knows, right? I mean, is Ted Roof a good coach? I don't know. Maybe. Is Tim Harris coached wide receivers in the last 15 years? No, but is he going to be good at it? Maybe. But I got to give him credit for having tough conversations and for making tough decisions. I don't know if they're going to work, but if he just run it back, we'd be killing him for the last 57 minutes.
At UCF Realist, asking about a baseball preview. I want to share, I've been talking to Michael, Emptiness 4, who goes to the games and is great on Twitter. Gives great updates. He's seriously considering writing some articles for us on sonsofUCF.com. I asked him this question, and he sent me over some notes. I'm not going to read all of the notes. He was at the scrimmage. He thought the pitching looked solid. He was at half the scrimmage, I might add. Pitching looked solid. Newcomers, a pair of Andrews, Estrella, the Stetson transfer, Williamson, true freshman, stood out in the scrimmage session that he attended. He thinks that they've got some power there. It's going to be interesting to see what Rich Wallace puts together. He's still got a little bit of time before baseball, but this is the one I like. He thinks that there could be as many as 4 players named Andrews on the team, possibly starting. That should be fun.
Go team.
That should be fun. Speaking of Michael, he says, who will have more wins in the Big 12 on Saturdays? Rich Wallace or Johnny Dawkins? Citronaut Saturdays with a Z.
I mean,
care to guess?
I'm going to go Rich Wallace. I think he has more options. I think there's a larger sample size. So give me Rich Wallace, I guess.
At Riley Carey 16, do you think every college in the Big 12 and SEC should get shirts that say horns down just to tick off Rodney Terry for his classist remarks? I'm annoyed with BYU making the students remove. I think it was your cow of the week, right?
Yeah, it was. I have nothing to add. Yeah, I think, listen, if this gets under a team's skin this much and now it's known, if you are an opposing team and you are playing them and you don't do it, shame on you. You should minus 10 points if you don't try any way to get under their skin. And if a simple hand gesture that doesn't involve the middle finger is something that gets them riled up and you don't do that, what are we doing, friends? What are we doing?
Yeah. At NightFan94, a late ad. There have been some quality issues, says Jason, with the ESPN basketball feeds for games during the season. Any truth to the rumor Trace chewing up bandwidth uploading his own bootleg game streams? Jason, if you knew, I am not so tech savvy.
Wait, oh my goodness, Jason.
I finally got the earbuds working. They weren't working for Around the Kingdom. By the way, my phone, Adam, I checked it. It went from 3% charge to 100%. So something's not right there because it was at 100%.
Jason,
drop.
listen, hit me in a DM. I will give you some stories about Trace Trocco and his technological savvy, which includes the time we were at the golf tournament and he dropped his phone and I thought his life ended.
Yeah, that was not a good scene.
That wasn't technology. That was more. I don't even know what it was, but it was. I should have filmed that for sure. That'd have made Olivia's video would have been second after that video.
At CJ Jones, UCF. Thoughts on our new quarterback social media presence? Definitely a hard right turn from Mackenzie Milton and John Rice Plumlee. Is he on anything? He's not.
Well, so CJ later corrected that and realized he was duped by a fake account. So not a real.
I did not see that.
Account. Yes, that's a fake account.
Yeah, I'm aware of the fake one.
Yes,
but I thought he meant just the lack of a great deal of posting and presence.
He's not on Twitter. I think he's an Instagram guy. So if you're following him on Twitter, from what I understand, you're not following him. Although it may be entertaining, so do what you got to do.
Yeah. At Love Not War 311, where should Javon be drafted? And where do you think he will be drafted? I didn't go in. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think I asked you how many guys on this 23 team do you think get drafted? And we thought, maybe nobody. But he's acquitted himself well in these practices, and I think he's moving up those boards. I think he gets drafted now. I don't know. I haven't paid enough attention to the draft boards and all that stuff. I've seen some people say second, third round.
I mean,
don't know.
That feels a little high. I mean, look, Senior Bowl is the place to be at, right? To get good publicity, good press. There's still a game coming up. I don't know if he's playing in that game, but you can make a good name for yourself in the Senior Bowl. So I think he probably gets himself maybe a late second day pick, maybe an early third day pick. But it really just depends on position needs and team needs at that point. But he certainly went from maybe a bubble guy to a guy that I think a lot of teams are writing his name down, figuring out, can we find a spot for him on our squad?
At Golden Knight _2. What is your post-game routine after a win and after a loss, especially a bad loss? Which just, when I read that question, reminded me, you got to bring back that UCF Mike story.
I don't want to bring that story anywhere near.
No, that's a tremendous story.
I don't want to bring that anywhere near here, which ended up
huddled in the closet.
Naked huddled in the closet.
Well, there was naked too.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, well, you buried the lead, Trace. After a tough loss, I typically want to unplug. I want to put my phone down. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to read message boards or Twitter. I want to kind of get away. So I think after the Baylor game, I didn't talk. I had to drive home. I didn't talk for the entirety of the time. I had the phone down. So I typically want to be left alone after a really, really bad loss. After a win, it really depends on it. I mean, go team, and then something has to happen. But a loss is not a pretty sight.
I've mellowed through the years. I used to come home no matter how late it was and start watching the game over again just to experience it, win or lose. And now I don't do that as much. Can I call out our intrepid beat reporter for men's basketball, Andrew Cherico, who at the halftime of the UCF Cincinnati game saying, when UCF wins, do you think they'll climb into the top 25? And I went, stop. I wrote stop. I go, you don't have enough calluses.
You scolded him.
UCF fandom. Well, and then he was talking about at the Baylor game how good they looked at I go, stop. They've closed nothing out yet. So
this is becoming a hostile work environment, Tracy.
He needs to experience. I mean, he will. As he's a UCF fan, he's going to experience a lot more pain.
That is fair. That's fair.
When you experience more of that, your coping mechanisms change. But I don't need that. We're climbing into the top 25 stuff at the halftime. Talk to me at the end.
You knew this was going to happen, Tracy, but you walked into it. You walked right into it. I didn't do it. You did.
Well, how is it bullying if we're having a conversation? You can't say we're climbing into the top 25 at the halftime of a game on the road.
Now he's got a quorum here. So
JP Gilbert. With the 49ers going to the Super Bowl, need Adams' review of his time in the Bay Area. Pros, cons. Would he ever move back? Rooting for his hometown Niners in the Super Bowl. Yeah. I'm rooting for Kalia Davis. Other than that, I
do like Kalia. I want to clear something up. I am not from that area. I was born in Chicago. I grew up in actual South Florida. So I'm not from real South Florida. I'm not from the Bay. My 4-year stretch there was lovely scenery. You'd probably have to take my arm off and beat me with it to get me to go back. Taxes, traffic, It was a good scenic place, but just not something I'd go back to again. I recommend it for vacation. Napa's beautiful, by the way, but not someplace I'm looking to put down as a zip code in near future.
You recorded shows much earlier than you do now.
It worked out better for me. UCF Mike. Now I feel bad for Mike. He was recording at like 10 p.m. I feel bad for poor Mike.
That's way past.
You would think he'd be better now in the show than he was back then, but.
All right. Thanks everyone for your questions. Thanks to Chris from the Daytona Beach News Journal for talking a little schedule with us, and thanks to Ben. I want to see Ben in a bow tie next week, which means I'm gonna need a win over.
I think we need Mama Hazel on next episode.
Maybe Mother's Day. Maybe that.
Yeah, we need to get some Ben Hazel stories in here.
Mother's Day and Elo. Great to be working with Elo on Around the Kingdom. It's fun every week. The fastest UCF show, and I was razzing Andrew, but Andrew did good work at the Baylor game. I'm going to sign off, and I'll show you his good work of tracking down our show closer for Adam Eaton. I'm Trey Strelko. Go Knights, everyone.
Charge on.
Yo, this is Robert Griffin III. I want to say thank you for watching Sons of UCF.
That is solid work right there.
People are ripping him from wearing his own logo.
No.
I mean, if I had my own logo, I feel like I'd wear it too. I have a Suns hat on now. What am I doing?